All right, welcome back to the Minuteman Initiative. It's been a little bit. Thanks for hanging in there, but we're back again. So, what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to be getting back into Reconnaissance, and actually this is going to be the final episode on Reconnaissance, at least for a little while. It's going to be one of those subjects that comes up pretty often because of how important we think it is to the modern Minuteman mission. But we've talked about basic reconnaissance tactics and stuff, rural reconnaissance, urban reconnaissance, vehicular reconnaissance, and we're going to finalize this little section of teaching on civil reconnaissance. Basically what it looks like in the modern day, how to do reconnaissance in the world we live in today, and then we even throw in some kind of thought exercises on what a dystopian or more tyrannical environment could potentially look like. One that's a little bit more non-permissive, but not fully combatant, one that you got to blend into your local community. So there's a lot of concepts that are in this that are super important to the overall mission of the modern Minuteman, and it's a very complex sub-discipline of reconnaissance to understand. So hope you guys enjoy the episode, and we're glad to be back at it. Back.
Here we are.
A little Minuteman Initiative hiatus.
Dude, we left.
We left. This is our final episode. No, I'm just kidding. Just for some reason. It's no reason at all. Dude, no, we were super busy, and we apologize for the delay in between episodes. We had a lot of trainings and some other stuff, so we've been working on getting some other educational content kind of up and rolling, heading in the right direction. So if you haven't stopped by the Minutemen initiative or Minutemen initiative, however you'd say that, Instagram, go check it out. We've got some little we're going to start doing like little teasers for the podcast, which don't really do you any good if you already listen because you already know, but we are, more importantly and more frequently, going to do some educational content on there, some short format, maybe a little bit of long format every once in a while, educational video content. So if you want to see what our faces look like, go get disappointed by looking over at the Minuteman Initiative. But no, we got a few up. We're going to try to get a few more up this week. We're calling them the Minuteman Minute, a little catchy PR marketing scheme to throw on there for no reason. And now you got to name it. You got to have a name for something, right?
Yeah. Just trying to justify it.
Yeah, dude. I'm self-conscious about it. No, I'm just kidding. No, but we call them the Minuteman Minute. We're going to be doing all kinds of stuff. Right now, I mean, it's wintertime here in Alaska, so it's going to be a lot of wintertime content. It's going to be things related to the winter. So we've got some snowshoe stuff on there right now, some winter gloves. We're going to go get some more snowshoe action up there this week, and then it'll just keep on keeping on, dude. We're going to, a lot of the things we talk about on the podcast, we're going to give you another look at it, a little bit of visual explanation, really short, so they're easy to digest and straightforward, so people can use it to kind of reinforce either information they already know, or if there's things that you might read about or people talk about it and it's like, oh, that just doesn't make any sense. We're going to try to just really make it super simple. Not going to be anything groundbreaking probably, but just kind of what we've noticed from, there's a lot of people out there that do this similar content, but I was like, yeah, let's just take like mundane stuff that might seem pretty simple and straightforward, but doesn't really get talked about. I mean, there's so many little details that I just planning out some of those episodes. I was like, man, there's just so many little things that people just say, it's like, yeah, you just, you do this and you do that and you just grab your whatever and it just gets said in passing, and then you either, if you haven't experienced using whatever that is, then it's like, how does that work? Or
we technically do that on the podcast as well.
That's what I'm saying, So the plan is to have good stuff there, kind of reinforcing what we're talking about, and we'll try to have it relate to things we've talked about and done, but it's just going to be overall kind of a spot that we do some educational stuff. There'll be some graphics trainings and stuff in there too, similar to what we do on our business page on our Dynamic Defense Solutions Instagram, but it'll be a little bit more focused and themed around some of the Minuteman minutes that'll be on there. So yeah, go give us a follow there. We want to kind of grow that page up. It's also kind of a passive backup page because the old DDS page is just constantly under attack. It's just being restricted and destroyed all the time. So we've been on a streak of doing okay, I think, for a little bit, but it's only a matter of time.
I think we've secretly bypassed by how often we don't post on that page.
Yeah, dude.
So we kind of fly under the radar.
Then all of a sudden we post and it just, the algorithm can't find us or something. I don't know. And also what we post is kind of like unique, I think, to what's normally posted on Instagram. So the algorithm, the AI or whatever that's running that is probably just like, what am I looking at right now? What are these graphics? So anyways, well, today we are going to talk about Reconnaissance again. So we've been referencing doing a kind of a final wrap up to Reconnaissance. So we talked about, well, I shouldn't say a final wrap up, but to this little mini series we've been kind of scattering in there on Reconnaissance. We're going to kind of button it up for now. I mean, Reconnaissance will be something that comes up pretty often. And now that these bigger, more broad sub-disciplines of Reconnaissance are out there and we've done episodes on them, we'll be able to, in the future, get a little bit more detailed potentially on stuff, and we'll probably come back and revisit them because, we've said it multiple times and we stand by it, that this, I think, for the modern Minuteman is one of the most important skills to understand. It fits the that small team, small unit so well that it's just something that we're going to have to talk about pretty often. I think a lot of people are like, focus on the gunfighting aspect pretty often. It's easy to be like, and right now there's a lot of content like, making rifleman teams and American riflemen and yes, absolutely, I'm all on board with that. We've talked about the whole return to rifleman concept for a while, but the Reconnaissance mission, I think, is under what's the word I'm looking for?
Undervalued, maybe?
Undervalued, yeah, undervalued and misunderstood. So we talked about kind of basic intro stuff to Reconnaissance very early on, some of our earlier episodes. I think it's like our third or fourth episode we ever did. And then in more recent weeks, we've done urban reconnaissance, rural reconnaissance, and then vehicular reconnaissance. And today we're going to talk about civil reconnaissance.
Yes.
which actually is probably the most important for where we are now, and for any kind of world that or any kind of scenario, I guess, that is slow developing. I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding or a misconception of the great boog, or the end of all time. Yeah, dude, that's straight out of 2016 for you, dude. The Boogaloo, one that was like popular back in like 2017 or something. But anyways, yeah, everyone's preparing for kind of the end of the world as we know it, and I think some people have a misguided view of what that could look like, and I think we see it a lot, and we've even kind of, some of our podcast episodes even maybe allude to it a little bit, that I think people think that you all of a sudden it's just like the world just goes crazy and there's a civil war, or
it can happen.
It can, yeah. No, it
you
can.
Look at like Ukraine and Russia, or
yeah. But I think it's the odds of it are a lot lower than to see something.
But there should have been civil reconnaissance happening prior to that, probably.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure there was, but
yeah. But it's something that if you don't know about it and you don't understand how to do it, then you're not going to be doing it. So, I think that kind of slow burn into dystopian society or tyrannical, authority is often a slow chipping away and a slower burn. I actually just recently watched, which is so random, but I recently watched V for Vendetta, which actually, go watch that movie now. Like, I recommend going. It's like from 2007 or something. It's old. It's pretty old. 2006 maybe. It's an old movie.
Yeah.
Well, not an old. It's old. It's been around for a while. I guess I should say. Well before COVID and all the stuff we see. It's in London, though,
right, or something like that.
Yeah. But it's very interesting. There's so much subtle stuff they talk about. So in the setting of the movie, they make reference to it several times, and I never picked up on it in the past when I've seen it, and I haven't seen it in years. Just recently, my wife and I watched it like a couple nights ago, and I was like, should we watch V for Vendetta? And she was like, yeah, that movie's actually really good. But we both found ourselves looking at each other multiple times like, whoa. So there's a government, well, first of all, it's a European, or it's England, I think. It's the UK. They don't really
across the pond.
Yeah. And they've basically fallen into like a dictatorship.
And they're using like propaganda and stuff, right?
Propaganda. It's a massive surveillance state. Like,
I haven't seen it since I was in the military, so it's been a while.
You should watch it, because it's first of all, it's just good. It's just a good movie, but it's very much about like the awakening and realizing that you have allowed your freedoms to be given away in the name of like safety and security. Mm-hmm. But they actually reference America a couple times in it, and there's like a few times on the news they're like, this is the current update in the American Civil War. And so like in this setting, in this world, America has fallen. Like they make reference to it near the very beginning. They're like, we shouldn't be sending aid to America. Like, they made their decisions, they've fallen away from,
which is accurate,
grace and stuff. And
like, you think you think all the NATO countries are going to support us when we fall?
No, not a chance.
That's why I don't know.
No one's coming to save you. But yeah, no, it was interesting. But I bring that up because I, we were planning to do this podcast today, and while I was watching it, I was really thinking about it, because it was definitely like a dystopian society. It's like, tyrannical surveillance state. Like, everything's illegal. Like, they've basically outlawed like religion. Like, you can't have like religious books, and there's no freedom to be yourself or anything like that. A little bit too much. They focus a little bit too much on the old sexuality, I think, in the movie, in my opinion. But that's just my personal take on it. But I
don't remember that part. But
yeah, it's subtle, but it's just kind of like, all right. But it still goes to prove the point of like, they don't allow you to be free. Like, you're not free to make your own decisions. And regardless of my own personal moral beliefs on some of that stuff, it's like, you should still have the freedom to do what you want. You shouldn't have a government telling you what you can and can't do, really. Obviously within reason, but there's I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, holy crap, like, civil surveillance would be so challenging in this environment. Like, there's curfews and stuff.
All you need is a mask and a sword.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a cape.
A vendetta. And just be Hugo, whatever his name is. I always forget his name, but
I don't know who it even is. Dude, do you even see his face the entire movie?
But you immediately, as soon as he starts talking, you know who he is. But Mr. Anderson, it's the, from the Matrix, Hugo Vaz or whatever.
Okay.
I always mess up his name, but Also Lord Elrond in Lord of the Rings. So it actually sounds a lot more like Lord Elrond in the old... I
don't know who Lord Elrond is.
Yeah, dude. What? Rivendell, dude.
I haven't seen Lord of the Rings since I was a child.
He's the one. What? No, we're going to have to stop everything and watch Lord of the Rings. How do you not watch it annually?
Oh, dude.
It's so good.
It's
one of the best.
I'm kind of waiting for my kids to get old enough.
Yeah, that's fair. But that's one of the best pieces of cinema, I think, that's available out there. I'll put that against anything. Even Star Wars, dude. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but Lord of the Rings is just overall a better made trilogy. And the new Hobbit movies are pretty good, but they're not as good, I don't think.
Yeah, I kind of just have to like...
Lord Elrond's the one that told him
I go to bed so
in the
early,
fire, dude.
That's like...
Destroy it! No.
I go to bed so early that's like... I don't know. Like, I don't have time to like watch like movies that... Like, I pretty much have to watch movies that I'm okay with my kids like being around.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, they're not watching, they're just running around playing, but
they might stop in and kind of watch for a little bit.
I'll stick to like westerns and things that are wholesome. Like, yeah, there's killing going on, but it's not like gruesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
Usually.
Lord of the Rings, you got to be a little older, I think, for it, in my opinion. None of my kids are ready for it yet, so. But anyways, dude, who knows where we're at right now. V for Vendetta, that's how we got there. Somehow we got to Lord of the... Oh, yeah, because of V, dude, the main character. But anyways, getting away from that, because that could be its own podcast episode. It'd actually be fun to take that movie and like break it all the way down and say what we would do.
No one wants to listen to
that. It wouldn't make it not fun, though. It'd still be fun to do. When we look at our analytics and it's like 2 downloads. Or it's like, thousands of downloads, but then listening duration 10 seconds.
Yeah.
All right.
So civil terrible.
So civil reconnaissance. What is it? Well, it is. It's exactly what it sounds like. No, it's. We're gonna break it down a little. We're gonna break it down a little bit.
It's funny because we actually say that so much.
I know.
It's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So we've talked about all the other reconnaissance disciplines, and they've intentionally been from more of a non-permissive or a combatant environment, like the rural and herbal. I literally done that so many times. Urban reconnaissance. Or wait, did you say herbal reconnaissance?
No, you did.
It was me. Okay.
I will not take ownership of that.
The rural and urban reconnaissance episodes were very intentionally more like combat focused.
Yeah.
Pretty traditional techniques and stuff. We kind of took it from the Minuteman perspective. But those concepts, I think, are important to understand because, again, we can always strip down from that. But this concept is the first. A vehicular, we kind of bridged the gap, I think, a little bit, which is one of our most recent episodes. But this is going to be very much a non-combatant focus. And this is taking a lot of those same concepts and skills and applying it to an environment where you don't have the luxury, or maybe it's not intelligent at all to suit up in your gear and go out and be more overt,
Yeah, which more than likely it wouldn't be.
Yeah. So this is kind of fitting that environment.
Well, that's just like where we've gotten,
Yeah.
Where that's just like a normal, like in Fallout,
Yep.
The video game.
Whoa, dude.
Yeah, it's just common for guys to be suited up cruising around. So
I see what you mean.
Whatever.
Yeah, dude. So this all the skills we're going to talk about today actually can apply to like current day, like the world we live in now. And I say that very intentionally because I think it's important to start working on this stuff in this way. Actually, in a way, I think it's more important to work on this stuff in this way than it is to work on the other stuff. You need to be working on all of it. And when I say the other stuff, I mean the other reconnaissance disciplines.
Yeah.
You should be working on all of it, but this is something that can be implemented now. I think, though, that that if you learn how to do the other things first and can practice those in that kind of like more combat style environment, then it'll, at least in my brain, it makes this stuff easier to kind of understand, because you have like worst case scenario, like, you know, risk reward is super high, the ratio is super high, but then in a civil environment, it's more about truly understanding your local culture and community, and being able to operate within that to be without raising too much suspicion. And then one can feed the other, so you might be, actually you probably will, if you ever find yourself in a world like this, you're probably going to be operating both sides of the same coin, overt and covert, maybe even at the same time. So but I think this is super important. I think it's actually underutilized to use these skills in today's world. I think as we start to list some of the things we've put together in our outline here, you're going to start to hopefully you're going to get some light bulb moments that are like, dude, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, that makes sense. So, because one of the things that, and actually, there's some people in the whole kind of gun community, self-defense community, whatever, that are kind of starting to talk about this a lot more, but like doing area studies, like good in-depth area studies of their local community. And because a lot of people are like, I'm ready to defend my community, but then they don't even have like a good grasp on
like what's going on, what's the culture, and
and even simple things like,
I think even that expands outside of your community too, because like, I don't know, we can probably get into this more, but there's always the chances of you getting relocated as well. Like, especially like people who are in a more urban area, like a big city.
Yeah.
And having to push out into the smaller towns. Like, you don't want to be the guy who's alienated because they dress like a city person.
Right.
Versus like how a country person would dress.
Yeah.
So it's like knowing how to adapt and fit in with your area.
Mm-hmm. And
it's not just like you're faking it, but it's like you don't want to be alienated, like not trusted because of the way that you dress. As simple as something as that, so.
Yeah, and you also don't want to stick out.
Yeah.
Because if you stick out, then you're immediately drawing attention, and there's not really a way to get around that, other than to blend in.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, using it to help you get a better idea of your local community and even extended communities, and actually on that point, it's like going and doing doing this in like some surrounding community too could be really smart. Yeah. And it's something you can do. You don't if you're learning how to do this in a way that doesn't draw any attention is the whole goal. So what better time to do that than now, where there's not really any major consequence. Like, yeah, you might, if you're being too obvious and you're just not very good at like going with the flow and this kind of stuff that we're going to talk about, then you might stick out a little bit, but they're just going to think you're a weird guy. You're not, it's not going to really be,
they're going to think
you're not going to be like,
or something.
Yeah. You're not going to have like, you're not going to have like the weird dystopian country agents come to your house and put you in a black bag, and haul you off. But, I mean, unless you do something really weird. If you do something really weird, that might actually happen. So don't be too weird. But anyways, there's things that you can do. And then additionally, you should be using this for planning and preparing. So, what do I mean by that? Well, very realistically for emergencies. So like if you live in Florida and you regularly have hurricanes and stuff, you live through that often. So you know what that looks like, but you could understand it far better. It would be worth, digging into like, what does this organization do? What's their emergency plan for hurricanes? What are the logistical details of how my local EMS teams respond to those situations?
Yeah.
How does, FEMA come in if it needs to come in? All those kinds of things.
Who's in charge of search and rescue? And like who coordinates it.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a better understanding of which agencies are gonna be in play, and then also like maybe people who are also private that volunteer or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and when they have like evacuations, like what routes are picked, that's super informative. That kind of stuff. It's all things you can figure out, and that's part of civil reconnaissance. But it helps you plan and prepare for emergencies in your area. Like, and it goes beyond environmental. It could be, whatever. Like a huge one for us here is earthquakes and then volcanoes. We have which sounds like something out of a weird cartoon, but yeah, we literally have like volcanoes that just go off here, and it's a big deal. Lava comes in and kills us all. No, just kidding. just you say volcanoes, and I know a lot of people's minds are immediately like, "Whoa!" but ash. You don't really think about it.
Yeah. It's not like Hawaii.
Yeah,
volcanoes.
Yeah, it's there. Well, our volcanoes here are usually way more violent, actually.
But I mean,
than theirs, but they're super far away. They're like for us, they're across the inlet, but they go off. They go off every once in a while. Like there's a few active ones right across the inlet, and there's one that's expected to blow. Like they assume that they think it's going to blow in the next couple of years, and it's blown a few times over the last couple decades. And dude, this whole area gets completely covered in ash. You got to wear masks and you got to cover your eyes, and it's a whole thing. It's not just like a simple thing. So having a good understanding of what that looks like and preparing for things like that. I mean, that's very specific to our area, but I'm just using it as an example. You can kind of connect the dots and figure it out for yourself. But flooding, but then beyond environmental stuff, talking about like mass casualty situations, like if you're in a town that's you have a lot of schools and stuff nearby, and you just the very specific and very unlikely thing, but you want to know like how is your local community gonna respond to like an active shooting? These are all just area study things, all the way from environmental down to infrastructure and where's your power come from, all these things. So the more you know, the more you can plan and prepare. So yeah, I mean, and ultimately it's like if we start doing all this now, I mean, we've already started to see and feel things change, and this progression towards a more kind of tyrannical stripping away of freedoms. I mean, we saw it so much with COVID and just the weird rules and regulations that were just kind of overnight imposed on America, and America kind of just stood by, It's kind of a scary time and honestly a disappointing time. Like I look back at that and I'm very disappointed in how we did and even how I did to some degree. I mean, there was like a level of, I remember when it first happened, there was like, I put on a mask. It was like, oh, they're saying to wear a mask. It's super deadly, because at first everyone I think thought, I know I at least did. I was like, whoa, I think this thing is actually like a really deadly thing, And then, a few weeks went by and you're like, oh, like you start seeing the percentages and it's like, whoa, it's less than the common. It's like it's less deadly than the common cold. I'm kind of confused now,
Yeah.
And then you kind of start being like, no, but our community is really small and very conservative. So it was pretty quick here. Like, people are like, you need to put a mask on. And you're just like, nope. And then it just kind of went away. I remember we had some family come up from the Milwaukee area.
Yeah.
And they were like, nobody wears masks here? And I was like, no. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, like, we're done. And that was like a few months after the whole COVID thing happened.
We're done with it.
But anyways, so but looking back at that, it's a good example of like, there was just from my own experience, there was so much I was caught off guard on. I was like, whoa, that's like why is this happening? Oh, that's how we're doing that. There's so many things that, if I had been more intentional about area study and reconnaissance within my community, I would have been more informed, I think, on a lot of the weird things that kind of happened. Like, remember there was like little travel ban things going on, like weird stuff like that. You remember that?
What do you mean travel ban?
Yeah, there was there was several states that had Like, you're not allowed to, there was curfews.
Oh yeah, no.
During COVID, it was weird.
We didn't really experience anything like that.
They did it for like a week here. It was like you can't go from Kenai to Soldotna, unless you whatever. And people were just like, no, like it just didn't happen. It got
okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I was like, I don't remember it actually.
There was a legitimate thing that they were trying to do for a little bit.
Oh,
I remember reading about it, and I was like, what? And it was like, yeah, you have to prove that if you reside here and you work here, like. You need to submit that. You may have to submit that to like I think it was like the Department of Public Transportation, the Republic of Transportation, dude.
Dude,
it was insane. All that weird stuff going on, and it ended up not going anywhere. It got shut down, but businesses getting closed that were deemed non-essential, all that stuff.
That was stupid.
That was crazy, and
which. I don't know how we stayed open all the way through that.
We were essential, brother. Dude, I think it was the old medical gear. Because I remember having to fill out a form. They were like, fill out a form and we'll deem you essential or non-essential. So I filled it out, and it was like, do you sell or distribute any of the following items? And it was like, one of them was like... I
think FFLs all stayed essential too.
Yeah, the form didn't have FFL stuff on it. The one I filled out, at least. Huh. But
it said like,
do you sell latex gloves and like masks, and do you sell like first aid medical supplies? And it was like I checked like all those, and then it was like, yep, you are an essential business, and you may operate your regular business hours. I was just like, sick.
I don't remember any gun stores getting closed down. Around here, at least.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think maybe I know the governor did something about that. I just remember that our next door neighbor here in the old business spot here was like, how are you able to be open? You know that you're supposed to be closed, right? And I was like, nope, I'm an essential business. And she was like, how? Or don't you just sell guns? And I was like, no, we sell medical supplies. And she was like, oh, and was all like grumpy about it because she had to be closed. But I was like, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. But anyways, I
mean, yeah, that's still stupid though.
Yeah, it sucks. It's dumb. So, but stuff like that, it's like, these are just very specific examples, but you can start brainstorming at how important it'd be, and it'll help you identify the areas you need to understand as well, if you think about specific scenarios. But we're going to start breaking it down though. So, basically civil reconnaissance, in a nutshell, it's typically it refers to intelligence gathering techniques in a non-military or a non-combatant context. So we've kind of made that clear, but you want to be gathering information about civilian infrastructure, even local populations, stuff like that. Like this all comes back to kind of area study, relevant aspects for like that, things we've already talked about, disaster response and planning, even civil security, like what does that look like, whether it's local law enforcement or if it's your, Minuteman group, and things get really bad, what does that potentially look like? And, even geographically go beyond that and start thinking about like, if it is a combatant situation, what kind of, fighting positions are possible, and what are choke points natural in the environment? What are areas we can successfully, keep bad people out?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I feel like that's a pretty in-depth intro. So I feel like we just kind of start getting into it.
All right.
So we're going to talk about planning and objectives first. This is just an overall kind of view of like, all right, you're going to do civil reconnaissance in your local area. We'll start there. Like, I highly doubt anybody that's listening to this has actually done a in-depth civil reconnaissance of their local area. If you have, then super cool. And honestly, email us about it. minutemen.initiative@gmail.com, because I want to hear about it. It'd be cool to hear how you planned it and how you laid it out and how it was done. But for like the 99% of the rest of us that haven't done that yet, listen up. But civil reconnaissance planning, and some of your objectives. So right out the gate, like define what you want to do, define your objectives. So, it's not this. You're not going to be very effective if it's overly broad. Like if you're just like, I want to know more about my area. It's like let's tailor it down a little bit. Figure out some goals. Like, do you want to go? Do you want to go see what your local infrastructure looks like? Like, where are your main power substations and your primary? What is the primary source of power in your local area? That's a huge one. That's very important. So that could be an objective. And then identify specifically like what information you're going to need and what you're hoping to gain out of it. What do you already know? That's a great place to start, and that's an area that I like to kind of start when planning something. What do I already know? Well, here's what I already know, and write that down about whatever that specific objective is, you know. So then that'll start to give you what you don't know, and then that can be your questions that you need answered. So that kind of gives you a more directed area. And a lot of this, too, you might identify doesn't require, like, physically going out and sitting in, like, a shady vehicle and taking pictures. You know, a lot of this might just simply be, like, you know, getting on the internet and looking stuff up. I think there's a lot of value in verifying it physically. And for me, I'm the type of person that if I look something up and research it, I want to go see it too. Like I want to go visually take it in and really understand it, whatever it is. But you'll be able to do a lot of your information gathering probably via the internet, actually. But then you'll have to go do your physical reconnaissance and kind of connect the dots, I think. But and then also give yourself a why. Like whatever your objective is, you should have like a good enough understanding of what you're wanting to do that you can answer like, why do we need to know this? And if you're just kind of like, well, because I'm curious. Well, maybe that's a good enough reason. I don't know, but you know, like infrastructure, to go back to that example, a good why is obviously like, how easy is it for this to go down? Yeah. How vulnerable is it actually? And how long is it realistically going to take for it to get back up and running again? You know, and you might be the guy that's listening to this right now that's like, dude, I got a generator and I got, you know, I'm good. I can be off. I'm already off grid or whatever. Cool, dude. But nobody else is. And that is the part that a lot of off grid people fail to remember. It's like your house isn't the problem. Actually, your houses will become the target. Yeah. There's a book I was reading not long ago, and it was talking about there was a section. It was talking about I think it might have been 9 Meals from Anarchy. It might have been from there. I can't remember exactly if that was the book, but it was a book talking about this kind of stuff, like survival kind of situation when things go really bad, and infrastructure grid goes down. And it was talking about using light discipline. If you are off grid and you have the capability to power your house, they were like, do not run your lights at night. Like,
I guess maintain the same. Not loud.
Yeah, maintain the same kind of discipline. Like, use it as little as possible. Power what you need, because if you've ever been in a power outage, like here, I see it all the time. Like we had a big power outage. We've had so many power outages this year. We had a huge one, and I was coming across the bridge, and it was dark, and I could literally see like, and it was just pitch black. Like the whole hillside on bridge access was just pitch black, and I could literally see like 3 separate. They're super far away from each other, but coming across the bridge, it's wide open. You know, on that ridgeline, I could see 3 very obvious houses that were running generators. They were lit up like a Christmas tree. And I was thinking about that. It made me think of that part in that book. And I was like, oh, yeah, dude. Like,
it's a flex until
holy cow,
goes on for a long period of time.
Yeah, until you get dozens of people literally coming to your house, killing you and taking all your stuff.
Another thing is with the whole generator power is it's like you're going to need fuel to run it unless you're running like a solar generator, which that's a whole different conversation. But
yeah,
but still, like, just because you have the power doesn't mean that you're necessarily set up for long sustainment in those situations. So
yeah,
It's like I got a generator too. I could run my house if I need to, but I know that's not like actually a sustainable, thing. Like eventually fuel's going to run out. Even if I have tons of fuel reserves, it's going to eventually run out.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know. It's not a perfect solution.
Yeah. So doing enough information gathering and reconnaissance to identify like even simply that, like, oh man, I didn't know this until just now, but you can see my house lit up miles away, that's bad. I need to figure out now I know that, or going back to the whole infrastructure thing in general, it's like understanding how long it could potentially be down and how vulnerable you may be. Like, yeah, if you are one of those people that has an answer for backup power, then great. But people get really desperate really fast. Again, that book, 9 Meals from Anarchy, that title is that's the title for a reason.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take long for people to spin off into chaos. So, so yeah, figure out that. Next, after you kind of get your objectives dialed in, that's where your research is going to start, your research phase. So, and this I've kind of got into this already, but this is where you could, depending on what it is, this is, you could probably find a lot on the internet. You can probably find a lot from like local records,
Yep. If you have, friends that work in, like we'll talk about like what powers the infrastructure. It's like if you have guys who work in that industry, it's like pick their brains. They're going to know a lot about it because they have to work on it when it goes down or whatever it may be. So it's like,
yep.
Those are great resources. Most of those types of people are going to be pretty open about it. They're not just going to be like concealing information or anything weird, but
yeah.
Unless the company like requires it or something weird, but
yep. Yeah, no, that's very, very good point. Yeah. Those local contacts are pretty important to have. And again, we're talking about our community. So like your local community. So this is all stuff that you should be building towards anyways. Like if you're, if you're not going out and seeking this information already, well, then you're already setting yourself up for failure because this information is usually free. It just requires a little bit of time and effort to go out and be intentional about it. But yeah, so the research that you're doing is obviously going to be very specific to your objective. And again, you have to take this reconnaissance mission, this planning from a pretty specific point of view. Kind of the next thing after that is going to be figuring out what kind of resources are available, what it's going to take. What is this something that we just look on the internet for, or do we need to go and travel to the local whatever? Do we need to go and
actually scout it out?
Go scout it out and figure out, go do some homework and
I guess identifying resources that could actually be just people who, work in that industry. So
yeah,
it's a form of research, but it's also a resource for you as well.
Yep.
Of people that already know more information on that than you would.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And also in that order, where you define your objective, your mission, research figure out what you know and what questions you have. If you immediately follow that up with like, hey, let's identify what resources we need, I think that's a good order because it's going to eliminate random stuff that you don't need to bring with you.
Yeah.
I've seen it a lot, even just in questions we get about like different podcast episodes or even just on like Gunstagram, there's a lot of like, there seems to be this kind of push towards, I want to use my cool gear, so I'm going to like set up my mission around me using this gear that I bought and I want to use. And even so much to where there's like whole like scenario ideas and videos and content and stuff that's kind of being made by, all kinds of different people do it, but by different people that it's like, whoa, this seems way more like you wanted to set up a scenario based on what gear you need to bring rather than like identifying a potential scenario and then fitting your gear to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that order I think is pretty important. And it's in resources isn't only gear. I mean, resources it's a logistical question. So it could come down to like even just how much fuel am I going to need for the drive? How much food should I bring? Are we going to stop for do we want to keep ourselves from having to stop for anything? Whatever it is, it's very dependent on what your objective is. Next, you need to establish a team. So how many people is it going to take? Do you want to divide and conquer? Is it like, how many individuals are you going to do this with? I would recommend doing it with, a decent amount. It doesn't have to be like, we're going out with 12 guys, but it's hard to beat the old 4-man team.
It's hard to beat a 4-man team, and I would never go less than 2. I feel like in that situation, kind of similar to like the vehicular reconnaissance. Like there's no reason to be by yourself.
Yeah. And if you got more guys than that, then develop 2 objectives. So if you do have a larger team, then pick a few days where you're like, all right, guys, for our team training for this week, we're going to be focusing on area studies and civil reconnaissance. So let's go out and here's our objectives. We have 3 different objectives. We want to know this about this. We want to know this about this and this about that. So let's go out and, you guys will be on this team, you guys will be on this team, and you guys will be on that team. And you go out and you do it. So obviously your team needs to be divided up skill wise. So you're going to have people that are going to be really good at certain things. Don't put all of your super charismatic people on one team, like your guys that can just go out and spin the yarn and just get information out of anybody.
Yeah.
Like just have good old conversation and just, yak it up. Like if all those guys are on one team and then you have all your like techie introverts on one team, well, that's going to be they're going to get very different results from both of those teams. So, obviously this comes back to what you're trying to do. You might not need any charismatic type people that are good conversationalists. Maybe all you're going to do is go take pictures of something. All right. Well, then maybe you only need your techie dudes, but I'd still recommend having one guy with you that can just quickly answer questions and dispel any concerns.
Yeah.
It helps a lot to have, if you get pulled over and then you just get a guy like, hey, what's going on? Yeah, well, we were just coming up here. We really liked that ridge line there. It's just beautiful. Have you seen how the sun hits that ridge line ever? If you guys ever been up this way? And we've been taking pictures of that like crazy. It's beautiful, And it's like, if you have somebody that can just pull that out of their hat, like, all right, sounds good. You guys, be careful. And you can just get out of a lot of stuff. So, and that's just a couple examples, but, be smart about it. You're going to know the guys that you have and who's good at what. So act accordingly. That's also going to kind of go back a little bit, maybe take another look back at resources, because obviously as you establish your team, that's gonna change what kind of resources you need. So you kind of got to go back and look at those. This one's pretty obvious, but I almost didn't include it, but I was like, no, I mean, you got to talk about it. It's doing a risk assessment. I mean, for most civil reconnaissance, especially in like a very neutral or like benign environment where there's nothing, like I said, like basically now where there's not really any consequence other than like people might think you're weird because you seemed off or something. Because a lot of this stuff takes practice, like especially when you're doing that like person-to-person contact kind of stuff. Like I said, some people are good at it, so those are the people you want to use for that. But you still want to do a risk assessment, and mainly because I think it's such good practice. But definitely, if you're using this in a more serious environment where there may be some real consequences, then you 100% need to do a risk assessment. That's going to help inform some of your planning, like your primary and your alternate and your contingency and emergency plans, your PACE plans. That is going to greatly inform that if you start to do kind of that risk assessment and you start to figure out like, hey, what are my risks? How do we avoid them? And how do we stay safe, maintain security, and then also not not stick out,
Yeah.
and not screw anybody over either. Like, I think the ethical side of that too is pretty important to consider.
Yeah.
After that, this kind of dovetails with resources, but logistical planning. So, transportation, communication, everything, all the logistics that go behind an operation like this. And the more you can really spend time developing good, solid policy for that, the better you'll be at it in the long run, and you'll only get better at it. So the logistical planning side, I think, is an area that this community overall needs to really work on. And I think people are very ready to go out and do the thing,
Yeah.
And some people enjoy it. Like me personally, I like the logistical planning. Like, I enjoy that, the week leading up to, anytime if we're going to go run a class, like a trauma class.
Yeah.
The week leading up to it, I actually kind of enjoy. It's kind of stressful because there's a lot to do, but I kind of like, thinking about okay, I got to have this, ready to go here, and I got to make this stuff, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then same with if we go out and do a training with a group training with the guys we train with, it's that whole plan up for whatever it is fun for me, but I know not everybody enjoys that. Some people are like, I just want to get out there,
Yeah.
And I can definitely, I've seen that before in when we do briefs and stuff. There, you just have your personalities that are just I want to be out in the woods,
Yeah.
But slow down, and I think also the logistical planning shouldn't just be on one or two people. I think it should be, especially if you're planning specifically for tackling a reconnaissance objective, I think you should be, the planning should take place, the logistical planning and preparation should take place with that whole team. So to go back to that 4-person example, if you got your little 4-person team, then you need to have a lead up and a prep time with all 4 of your team members that you're going to go out and do that with, because then everybody's on the same page and understands everything and knows where everything's at. And also, people might think of certain things that others may not. So
yeah, absolutely.
You got anything on any of that?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think it's super important to keep everyone involved because, like you said, everyone's gonna have their own strengths and weaknesses, and that'll kind of allow people to, have input in areas that you might not think of, kind of like what you were saying. So, I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah. Kind of next, the next thing I kind of recommend is to develop a timeline, and this should be detailed, and you should absolutely give yourself hardline times, or hard timelines. So it's one, again, kind of from that training perspective, it's gonna really test your adaptability and your efficiency. You can start with bigger timelines at first, but sticking to a timeline is a lot harder than most people think it is.
Yeah.
And it takes time to get good at, but you'll get to a point where you can literally think of a whole outline of what you want to accomplish and give it a timeline. And once the better you get at it, the more you're like, dude, whoa, that's crazy. We are on schedule, which is pretty cool to be able to do.
Yeah.
But even if you fail at that, it's important too, because it's oh dang, you learn whoa, that took, we wanted to get a bunch of pictures of this place, so that took way longer than I thought it would. I thought we'd have this done in 45 minutes. Well, it took 3 hours. That's important to understand, because then for next time, ooh, we might want to give ourselves, we were moving a little slow, but maybe we'll give ourselves 2 hours for this part of the objective,
Yeah.
Or this part of the mission. So, anyways, yeah, so that's develop a timeline, make it as detailed as you can. That's going to also help you zero in on what your objective really is too. Because if it's too broad, you're going to get
locked in on stuff that's not super important.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to spend too much time that's for urban reconnaissance, like prior to going into the building that you're planning on using, you do, the clover leafing around if you can, and that's why there's a timeline set, because it's like we can't waste a whole bunch of time here. We need to get into the objective. Like, yeah, there is a time set because it's an important step, but we need to set boundaries on how long we want to spend time doing this. And once you've hit that time frame, even if you didn't complete like a full clover leaf around the whole building, then it's like, okay, it's time to get back because we're about to be in that time frame as well.
Yeah.
It also is a security element as well, and it just allows people to, for one, be all on the same page, and for two, if for some reason someone doesn't return in that time frame, then like, okay, something's off. And same with the civil reconnaissance. If you have a team pushing out to do something, that doesn't mean everyone's out there doing it. You might have an at-home based team that's kind of keeping tabs on like a checklist basically of like things to accomplish, and it's like, okay, for whatever reason they haven't gotten back to us on this timeline, so it's like, what's happened? What do we got going on? But
yeah, it's a big deal, and I think that's one of those parts of the whole kind of with logistics. It's something that a lot of people underestimate and don't think is very important, but it's an important thing to be able to do. It just helps you be overall more efficient and which is more effective. Another thing is developing your communication plan. This is huge. What kind of policies are you going to have? Are you guys on civil reconnaissance? You're probably going to be able to get away with using cell phones. You just got to know, though, that depending on your environment, cell phones can be easily intercepted and listened to, and texts can be read, and data can be obtained, and all that kind of stuff. So that brings up a whole other thing. So it's very dependent again on what your environment's like, what you're dealing with. But regardless of what your communication plan is, everybody has to know it, and everybody has to be aware of it, and has to be tested and vetted. And what I mean by that is you always test communication gear and policies or procedures prior to going on the mission. So test your emergency alert systems, whatever that is. Test your basic first line of communication, your contingencies. Like, it all needs to be tested prior, and everyone needs to be on the same page. This kind of thing is, it's amazing. You start looking back through, after action reviews of, like different operations and stuff that have happened over the years. A lot of that stuff is not just open information, but you can find some stuff out there, and it's amazing how historically how many operations have failed just due to like basic communication. So that's a big one. You got to have a plan for how you're going to collect your information and your data. So whether that is interviews, like if you're going to go talk to somebody, are you going to record that conversation? Is it going to just be kind of like reported back by memory? I know for me, for example, like I can jack it up. I can jaw jack it up with the best of them. I can run a conversation and just get all kinds of information out of people just by having friendly conversation. But I won't remember hardly any of that conversation. Like, it'll just be like, oh yeah, I think he said something. It'll just be trash, for me to try to like come back and report what he said. So either having like a recording device, like I'd need either somebody nearby somehow, like recording it, or I'm just envisioning those weird, like, clear, just listening to the conversation. No, it could be literally as simple as like your voice memo on your phone, dude.
Yeah.
So, but that data needs to be collected. So whether it's just going to be by memory, some people are great at that. Some people have really good conversational recall where they can just have a conversation and be like, yeah, he said this, and this. Some people can't. So, if you're going to take pictures, what kind of cameras are you using? Big cameras take really good quality pictures, right? But they stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
I know if I ever saw like a guy taking pictures from inside a vehicle, I'd be like, what the heck is going on? What in the pedo is going on here? You know,
Yeah.
I'd be like weirded out by it. So, cell phones take really good pictures. The amount of secretive pictures you can take on a cell phone
Oh no,
is crazy, dude.
you're gonna rat yourself
You can
out.
take some sneaky pictures and people have no clue. So, it's something to consider. I mean, it's very dependent. Again, like if you want to do it from afar, then it's probably not gonna work with a cell phone. You're probably gonna need like something with a lens that can zoom in and have good quality still. You got to be able to decipher the data. You know, if it's just a fuzzy, zoomed in, stupid picture, like nothing makes me more mad than like, dude, I saw this today, and you're like, look at this bear I saw, and they show you a picture, and it's just that I took a video of it, and it just looks like it was just taken from someone with Parkinson's disease, and you're just like, dude, what is going on right now, dude? I can't see anything. So, yeah, dude, like just think about that. Yeah, you might have, you also might, have, stuff you can gather from good old Google Earth.
Yeah.
Jump on Google Earth and you'll look at the old satellite, and see what you can gather there. And honestly, it's the mixture that you're going to get the most information from. So we have overhead imagery of this, which everybody has access to overhead imagery for the most part. It's not always up to date. So that's also why you want to go out and confirm it.
Yeah. That's why I like Onyx.
Oh, is it more up to date?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's over. And it's got satellite imagery that's up to date.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So,
I mean, it still gets behind as well, but I think it's a little bit more up to date than Google.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure. I may be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's more up to date.
I think you can pay for like Google Earth Pro or something, and I think it's like 1 year behind.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I don't know much about that. So, but yeah, that mixture I think is important. So that kind of goes hand in hand too with like, what you want to use, like specifically what kind of technology you want to implement and integrate. Do you want to use drones? Like drones could be something that could help you a lot. It starts to stick out a lot more though. And also if you're talking like more dystopian or more like surveillance state, it's a lot of signals that are happening when you're using the drone. So be smart with that kind of stuff.
If you're planning on doing like listening devices and things like that too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And then at the end of all of this, kind of as you tie everything together, you want to have all of your contingency planning figured out. That's emergencies. If somebody like gets hurt in the midst of it, if your vehicle breaks down or comms fail, like you need to have a contingency for every single thing we've listed in this plan needs to have a contingency for it, which seems daunting, and it absolutely is. But like your objective, you should have contingency objectives right out the gate.
Yeah.
Something might happen where it's like, crap, we can't do this today. All right, well then we'll do this instead. That changes everything. So that right there is daunting because it's like that means you have to have a plan for that contingency objective,
Yeah. Which means you have to have contingencies for all that.
Yeah. It's crazy. And you might be listening to it like that's insane, but it's really not, because you should have it's just another mission that you've planned the same way. And so if you are not able to do the one day and you go do this instead, well then you just do that other one the other day,
Yeah.
So it's not like a waste of time. It's still going to be useful. You need to have basically contingencies for every single thing after that. But you're going to have objective specific contingencies for certain things. Like your timeline is a huge one. Your communication is another one. Data collection methods. They're going to all need very specific contingencies. So got to have all that prepared, and everyone's got to know it. You got to have it briefed. And then the final part of this whole thing is doing a post-mission analysis. So after you've done everything that you need to do, you need to bring it back right away. This needs to be right away. There's a huge, I think there's so much value around doing an after actions review or a post mission analysis immediately afterwards. It's all fresh. You just got done with it. You've got fresh data. You can sit down and process it together. This doesn't have to be like we're converting all this information into intelligence right now. That's not what this is. But it is getting everything organized and curated. So when we come back to it later and really discuss it and break it down, we can decipher it a lot more easily. So,
yeah.
Dude, you got anything on that?
I mean, that's pretty basic, but I think a lot of people fail to do that step. I mean, that's where everyone can kind of get back on the same page, kind of like similar to, the beginning, coming up with all your planning as a team, going over the analysis, I think is equally as important, because you're able to get everyone's view on like what happened. Maybe, if me and you were doing it together, maybe you saw something I didn't see.
Yeah.
And then you bring it up and I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that happened. And
right.
You're like, oh yeah, I thought everyone noticed. It's
yeah.
Like, no, dude. Like, no, we didn't see that, or whatever. So I think it's good to do that, because you might miss something that could be crucial to the overall mission, just because one guy thought, oh yeah, everyone saw that, and it must not have been that big of a deal because no one brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
yep.
But I think that's super important.
Yeah. Yeah, so...
And that's anything. That's not just civil reconnaissance. I think that's pretty much anything, any kind of training that you do, or missions that you do.
Yeah.
I think it's super important to do that, or, a traumatic event that you go through, or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's benefit to that pretty much in anything you do.
Yeah, that's what's kind of cool about this topic, because I feel like it takes, you kind of get hooked in on like rural reconnaissance and urban reconnaissance, and then you start to, as we've kind of ran these episodes in sequence, they haven't been one after the other, but they've been in near sequence to each other. We're here, and these are all kind of on the other end. This is all the non-combatant stuff that can still be applied to.
Oh yeah, and it absolutely should be.
Yeah.
This is all,
And we've talked about a lot of the planning with in the other subdisciplines as well.
Yep.
But so now you kind of know how to plan it, which really, like I just said, doesn't differ too much from how you plan a reconnaissance mission in general. It's just very similar. You could use that same format even. But now I want to start getting into specifics. So what if you're going to use civil reconnaissance for like emergency response to things? So civil reconnaissance is, in my opinion, it could play such a vital role in actually being prepared for emergency situations. We kind of already talked about this in the beginning. We used it as an example. Well, we're going to kind of dig into that specifically, because I've written down some things that maybe not everybody's thought about. They're really basic, but you could take each one of these sections that we're going to kind of talk about and develop entire reconnaissance objectives around them. You really could. So the very first thing is just assessing your community's vulnerabilities. So this goes back to some of the stuff we already talked about, like environmental stuff. So it could be like if you're in an earthquake, like we're in an earthquake prone region, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
What happens? Well, how does our local community respond to something like that? Historically, how bad have earthquakes been? Well, it just so happens that in Alaska, we've had one of the biggest earthquakes that's ever been recorded. So the 1964 earthquake.
Yeah.
So that's they can be bad. So
and not only did it take out infrastructure, like it took down structures in general.
Yeah,
like
killed a bunch of people. So it's pretty wild. But yeah, like how vulnerable are you to something as uncontrollable as an environmental hazard? Like, is your infrastructure built up for it? Can it is it seismic rated? If you get a lot of like flood risk stuff, How prepared is your local community for that? Like there was all these big floods, I think, down in Texas recently, right?
Yeah.
People are kayaking around in the street.
Yeah.
I feel like it was not too long ago, but maybe a couple months ago or something. But,
yeah.
I might have the wrong spot, but I know people were out there kayaking around like literally through the streets of their suburbs, That's like what happens, Are you prepared for that? Again, what kind of infrastructure is needed? Is it going to withstand it? What are the authorities going to do? Are there preparedness efforts for that? And if there's not, then you can start looking even farther into how you can be prepared, at least as a family and team, So, the next one kind of goes hand in hand with that, and that's infrastructure mapping. And you should be very aware of where's all your local infrastructure. And that's not just your power grid. That's everything from hospitals to like whatever your transportation networks are. Does your city have a subway or like a, what are those called?
A bus?
Yeah, buses. It's not the word I was thinking of, but
I don't know what you're looking for.
Like not a ferry, but what are those? For some reason, my brain's thinking a trolley, dude. Not a trolley either. Like
is it in the water?
A shuttle, like a shuttle service. Shuttle services. Oh my goodness, it was destroying me. Yeah, so emergency shelters, all the utilities, like we've already kind of been talking about. Literally map that out. That is like so important to know and understand. That's going to draw so much attention for one, and also it's going to give you an idea of like response times for certain things. Also, what's included in there is all of your emergency services, all of your law enforcement agencies. Where are they at? Where do they deploy from? Are they home-based where they get to take their squad car home, or do they have to drive to work and deploy out of the police station? There's differences there. That's a whole other infrastructure mapping is again, and I'm basically just describing an area study here, which is kind of what this whole thing is. But these big topics that we're listing, you could, again, plan whole civil reconnaissance objectives and missions on these topics.
Yeah.
And you should. So, what kind of strategies do local authorities have to protect infrastructure? That's a harder one to figure out. That starts to get into sensitive information, and that's really where you're going to be tested. But that, man, how valuable would that be? You can even figure some of that out by local contacts. You start leaning on some of those local contacts, and you might be able to get some of that information.
Yeah. Another one is like how structurally sound is your cellular data, because it's like not cellular data, but your your
towers. Cellular cell service.
Yeah. It's like, I know a lot of people in this space have radios and whatnot, but it's like depending on how spread out you are, how big the town is and whatnot, your radios might not be able to reach if you don't have that already pre-planned.
Yeah.
That's not one of your concerns to begin with.
Yep.
So,
yeah. Again, kind of in the same vein of that, kind of going along with that area study a little bit, doing a pretty simple population analysis. That's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's literal, like, legitimate, I guess, like official formats for doing a population analysis that you can follow. You can just look them up on Google. Just be like, how do I do a population analysis of my area? And it'll probably just be like, what area do you live in? And you can probably find one. But I think it'd be valuable to try to do one on your own, because it might give you a lot of information and ask you questions, or the format might even give you ideas that you didn't know you had.
Yeah.
So, and physically doing that through reconnaissance and then going out and verifying that would not only be really good training, but it would be a great way to get like hands-on with that. Developing some demographic data, the density of the population, what kind of if you're in an area that has a lot of like tourism, how does that impact your local population? And how do you, what's your what's your emergency infrastructure look like for like rescue and protecting the population, different things like that.
Yeah, like how much food does your stores have in case that there was a shortage or everything, there's literally so many topics you could attack.
Yeah. That kind of rolls right into the other point I have written down here, which is resource identification. So, figure out what kind of resources you have. That's everything from like food, emergency supplies. What kind of community centers are there that offer there's a lot of nonprofit kind of stuff out there that offers different things. And if there's a major event, how fast do you think those resources are going to last, and how quickly are stores replenished? That stuff you can figure out pretty easily. You might be like, well, how? Well, just go to your store and say, this is out of stock. When do you guys get your shipment in for this? When do you think you'll have this? You just make something up. Like, you can actually just be in stock, You might get that.
Or find something that's not in stock.
Yeah.
And you may not even want that item, but...
Yeah. And they're just
going to be awkward when they're like, oh, yeah, it's right over here.
Yeah. That's true. But yeah, if you find that ambitious person, usually people aren't that ambitious.
Yeah.
Though. But yeah, they'll probably tell you we get our shipments every Thursday, It's like, oh, okay, cool. And that comes in on that. Yeah, we get that often. Or like, ooh, we only get that. A lot of people
figured that out during COVID.
Yeah.
Because there was such a shortage.
Yep.
On the TP, dude.
Yeah. Whew. The toilet paper. Yeah, that's a good example too. Like, that is one simple, not even really necessary resource. You can let's be real, you can get by without toilet paper.
Yeah, dude.
Easily. You can even be like still clean and get by without toilet paper. But people freaked out about toilet paper.
I know.
Was that worldwide or was that just here?
That was worldwide.
Or nationwide.
That was nationwide.
Dude, it was crazy worldwide. Here. Yeah. Mr. Worldwide.
Say most places in the world don't even use toilet paper, so.
yeah, it's true. Dude, the old butt in the creek.
Butt in the creek or the old bidet.
Oh, the bidet. Do they not use toilet paper? It's just all water washing?
I don't know. I'm just... Even the classy people across the world don't use toilet paper.
So, yeah, I mean, even toilet paper alone was a simple, singular resource that wasn't even very necessary, and people literally got in fights about it. Like in our local area.
It's weird.
It's weak.
I mean, I do like toilet paper. I'm not going to lie.
I like it too. But I mean, I'm not going to fight somebody over the last roll of toilet paper.
No, I'm not going to. Yeah, no. That's crazy.
That's just people panicking. And it's just people that were just... I don't even think it was the toilet paper. I think it was the subtle reminder of like, nothing is for sure.
Yeah.
You're little, like, you live in paycheck to paycheck and scraping by and not, not saving, and then just like coming and buying all these little comforts, these little creature comforts, that's not, we're very, very blessed that we have that now.
Yeah.
So yeah, look at that. Look at those resources and figure out like what's something that's restocked often and frequently, and when's it come in, and what's something that's, once it's out of stock for a while. And then that'll give you a good idea of like what's going to go first,
Yep.
What essential equipment or essential resources are going to come in, and what's going to get kicked off and basically not restocked until your society goes back to normal. Because there will be things like that are just like, oh yeah, no, we don't get that here anymore.
Yeah.
Because that even happened during COVID. And again, I want to stress that COVID wasn't, everyone's always like, it was a pandemic. It's like, no, dude, it was not even crazy.
It was weak.
Our whole supply chain completely shifted during that, and we still see problems with it today. Like, there's still, like, it's just common to get told, like, well, it's just, the raw materials aren't available, so we just won't have it. We don't know. And you're just like, okay, well, here we are. I guess we'll just wait until it's in stock again or whatever,
I think it's a working issue now. No one wants to work anymore, so.
Well, regardless of what it is, it still exists. It's like.
No, I know. Yeah.
But I agree, though. there's the working force has definitely been
It's like
slashed.
everyone realized that, I can just get paid to be at home.
Yeah, dude. Come on, man. Anyways, community engagement, engaging with your local community is really important. So,
Yep.
This is probably, I probably should have put this higher on my list I got here, but it is so important. Good old Reaper consultation on the old IG has been saying for weeks now to stop being weird and talk to your neighbors. That's been like his I think that's his new motto actually of his company is stop being weird and talk to your neighbors. Reaper consultation. I'm just kidding. No, but he's been talking about it a lot, and it seems very simple and kind of dumb, but it's not at all. And the reason he's been pushing on it so hard is because we have been conditioned as a society to be so private and introverted and sink into our phones. And it's the wrong answer, and this applies to me. I'm not preaching. It's the wrong answer that I talk to more people on my phone than I do face to face. And that's not always the truth. But like there's people that, there's random people that I'll get in conversations, like deep conversations with on the phone, and then it's like, I could know a lot more of my neighbors' first names. You know what I mean? So
I think I'm more I probably don't have more conversations on my phone than I do with people, but I don't really have that many conversations with people, so I feel like that's where I'm lacking.
Yeah, so maybe you do have more conversations with people on your phone?
No, I probably don't.
Oh, okay.
It's probably pretty I just don't talk to very many people, so it's like like I don't feel like talking on the phone either.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's that's just one aspect. I mean, community engagement could be like, just being more actively involved anywhere in your community will yield great benefits. Like, even like church. Let's say if you go to church and you're more plugged in at church, like you go to a small group, or you go to like anytime your church has like a little event, you go to it. That's huge. You can meet people. You can figure out like, oh, this guy's really cool, or oh man, there's this person runs this program this local program I didn't even know about. You meet. There's so much overlap in places like that. Community overlap that you're gonna meet and connect with a lot of people that you otherwise just never would. Because other parts of your life and world aren't gonna have you overlap with people like that.
Yep.
What's really cool about a church is it doesn't matter what societal status you come from. A church is one of the few locations that you have a mixture of classes, so to speak. So you could have like your white class, very wealthy family that goes to the same church as, your
blue collar
single mom family that's kind of barely making it. They both go for the same reasons, probably, in general. I'm generalizing a little bit. But they go for the same, like they go because it's something they believe in doing. And it just so happens too that there's a lot of influence in that environment on like love and, loving your neighbor as yourself, for example, things like that. So it's a great way, and I'm not saying to use the church, because I'm very passionate about going to church, and I think it's something that as a Christian that I'm called to do. It's part of being obedient. Like that's part of what I'm supposed to do as a Christian, and if I'm walking in the Spirit, then I should be going to church and fellowshipping with fellow Christians,
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, not only will it increase at least for me, not only has being more plugged in at my local church bettered my relationship with Christ, it's made me feel a lot more connected to this community. Not in like a weird, selfish way, but just in a good, wholesome way. But the byproduct of that, though, is very obviously like you can get a lot of information by being like that. Yeah. So I just want to make it clear that that's not why I'm being like that. Sounds kind of weird. I don't want somebody that goes to church with me to listen to this and be like, what the heck? You know, like I love doing, you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that comes back to ethical stuff. Like, and we talked about this a little bit when Reaper was on our podcast. Like, it's not, you don't want to use this from a manipulative perspective, but at the same time, you know, be efficient and think outside the box and realize that good community engagement is just right under your nose. It really is, because it's not like, I think people think community engagement and they're like, oh man, like I got to volunteer at a nonprofit and go like do this crazy thing that's way outside of my comfort zone. You don't really, you can, and honestly that stuff could be really good. And if you have an area that you're skilled in that you could help in like a local nonprofit, then that's awesome.
Yeah.
But and you will get good community engagement for that. But this right here, especially for your local community, not only is it something you should just be doing, you know, it is going to be one of the best ways to get an idea of what the kind of heartbeat of your community is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and that goes into like what I was talking about with the if for whatever reason you did have to relocate, that's going to be something that's going to have to almost take the forefront. Like you said, like you wanted that higher on the list. That would be very high on the list if you ended up having to relocate your position, because it's like,
oh yeah,
you have to hit the ground running and kind of, in order to get in a good position where you benefit yourself. And that's not just to be like a manipulative person. That's going back to the ethics, but it's like,
yeah,
just so that way you can have allies that you've created in a quick amount of time.
Yep.
But
yep. Absolutely. That's huge. Yeah, and then I've got one other thing on here, which is kind of more, it's from a different angle, but when I was kind of preparing this, I thought of this, and I was like, man, this is actually huge, and it kind of goes back to that after actions review, but it's a post-emergency assessment. So what does that mean? Well, basically look into past emergencies that have happened in your community, because every community has some kind of emergency that's happened.
Yeah.
Like a great example of this would be that train that blew up, or that train that leaked all that toxic chemical stuff all over was it in Ohio, I think? Yeah. Yeah, like Palestine or something. Palestine, Ohio, I think.
Yeah.
That is a really good example of something that you can look at, see what happened, identify what was the damage that happened, look at what areas immediately needed assistance, what areas needed follow-on assistance, what were the response efforts, how long did that take, and what's the rebuild, what's the recovery and the reconstruction look like? How long did that take? Is it still ongoing? You know, for us, it's earthquakes. We've had a lot of earthquakes, and we had a crazy one. Actually, it was one of the years we went to SHOT Show. I think it was 2020, maybe. Was that 2020 that we were there and that happened, or was it 2018? I don't remember, but we had a big one. And it was right up in Anchorage, and it straight up like messed some stuff up. Like some infrastructure got.
That was in 2018.
Okay, yeah. Some infrastructure got destroyed, and yeah, it was wild. And I remember being like, oh crap, I'm not even there. Like I was kind of worried about it, but thankfully it didn't do too much to like where we were living at the time. But there were some areas that got really messed up. I mean, major road systems even got damaged and kind of destroyed by it. But it's amazing how fast that was a great example of how quick the infrastructure gets reinstated. I mean, it was like that week they had fixed pretty much everything, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. I think it's just dependent on where it hits.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it was like, it was slowing a bunch of stuff down. So it was like something they had to fix quickly. So, where if that happened in a small town, I don't think it'd be as quick.
Yeah.
But because it happened in a big city, it was kind of like, oh, we got to get this fixed.
Yep. Yeah. And that's a good point. So, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of different from because obviously that's not part necessarily of your actual plan and the different things you want to look at. But for your overall area study and understanding like what your objectives may end up needing to be, that can inform a lot. So look at past events.
Yeah.
Past emergencies. So, yeah, and then basically kind of as we finalize and kind of in summary, I guess, I kind of want to take us a different direction and change the perspective a little bit. So I guess with all that stuff we just talked about, like this still all carries over, still all applies. But that was more from the perspective of, you can start this today. Like you could do this now and you could do basically training and practice in this area. But also gain this intelligence gathering. That reconnaissance method is it's not just for nothing, Yeah. Whereas if you go out and practice like combatant rural reconnaissance, you're probably not going to actually get any usable data, but what you are going to get is confirmation on your skills and confirmation on your abilities and your capabilities,
Yeah.
So yeah, you're getting some data in a way, but doing this now and training this now, you could get some true actionable data that you can use in the future if you needed,
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I've kind of got a list of things that we're going to talk about that are more applying to that tyrannical or dystopian society. And this is where things get pretty complicated pretty quick, because again, we're going to be, from the civil reconnaissance perspective, we are trying to maintain the appearance of the civil society, whatever the local society is. We're not appearing as a combatant force. There's no clear delineation between like, oh, this is a enemy or not,
Yeah.
And a great example that we have in recent history to this is actually Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So, and that's a lot of when I personally experienced this. We were an invading nation that was in a country that majorly had the upper hand. The Taliban couldn't really stand and fight with us traditionally or in a conventional way.
No.
They just were completely outgunned, outskilled, outmatched in every way. But man, where they were successful is not only some guerrilla tactics, some very like basic like guerrilla harassment and stuff like that, but where they were even more successful was their civil reconnaissance, their ability to just blend in and be part of the local populace and pass on information about, where we were going, how many of us there were, and just all kinds of important details, even down to like individually what we looked like by identifying, trends they saw in our gear,
Yeah.
like being able to describe us by like, oh, this guy always wears this type of like his layout on his plate carrier looks like this. Like it was detailed. We intercepted some stuff, and it was amazing how detailed their civil reconnaissance efforts were.
Yep.
So
yeah, and some of that has to do with the rules of engagement that we had over there.
Yeah,
that allowed them to be way more successful than they should have been too, in a way. Because like there was times like I always think of in Lone Survivor when they're sitting there trying to decide if they want to let those sheep farmers go, and they're looking at that one guy. One of them's just like, he's a bad guy. And he's just like freaking out, like he's just looking at his face, and he's like, I know this dude's bad. Like he's going back down to the Taliban. He's telling them, and it's like, but based off the rules of engagement, they technically did the right thing.
Yeah.
But it got them
tough.
all pretty much killed. So
yeah, I know it's
a whole bunch of other people killed too. So
it's tough though, because like when we were over there, I mean, I don't even see how rules of engagement would, unless you were just gonna be completely non-permissive and not allow you don't allow civilians to walk around.
Yeah.
Then there'd be no other way, which is basically what Russia did.
Yeah.
Russia got.
But that's why they weren't able to get ground, is because they had no.
Yeah. Then they made no progress.
They had no favor by the people.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's just kind of depending on what kind of enemy you're dealing with in that situation.
Yeah, because they would just be like, you'd see a guy get on a cell phone and you'd be like, he's probably ratting us out,
Yeah.
But I mean, people got on cell phones all the time, so it was just kind of like, I mean, we would stop people and question them,
Yeah.
but they'd just be like, oh, I'm going down to my,
Civil reconnaissance.
Yeah, they would just, or they would just act like they couldn't talk to you, and then you'd be like, dude, this guy speaks Pashtun, and they're like, oh, they would start just rocking and rolling, and then the interpreter would be like, oh, he's going to pray, and you're just like, okay, no, he's not, but
I mean, that's what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
You can do about it.
Yeah, you're just like, whatever, dude. So, but man, it's super successful, and so I guess it depends on what type of society you're into, because we obviously weren't just murdering everybody, but you could be in that
that's what I'm
environment.
saying is like, it depends on the enemy, but
yeah. And if you are in that environment, well, then that's where it shifts to combatant. That's what it's like. Well, okay, then that's the world we're living in. Well, then we're thrown down. Then we're putting our gear on and let's go.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we're gonna start to kind of walk through that. Very first thing, right out the gate. There's no way around it. OPSEC. Operational security, dude. If you are in a V for Vendetta type environment, your operational security is so important. You've got to have it. You've got to maintain it. You have to have strict operational security measures in place. This means everything from your coordination, who you're involved with, who even your family. These are things that you need to try to keep as protected as possible. Any kind of activity that you could be involved with, any kind of information, not even just sensitive information, just any information that can lead back to anybody you're connected to has to be isolated and protected.
Yeah.
That is easier said than done. That's hard to do. And I see this all the time on the internet. We're like, yeah, you need to practice OPSEC. And you can tell that most of the people that say that's where their knowledge ends. They're just like, OPSEC, dude. And you're like, okay. And because they'll say it about weird stuff too. Like someone will post a picture and they're like standing there with their buddy, and their faces are blurred or whatever. And then someone in the comments is like, OPSEC. And you're like, dude, okay, there's a level where, like, what data have you gathered from this picture?
Yeah.
Two guys, faces blurred. Well, he's got tattoos on his arm. It's like, okay. I mean, and then there's the other side where it's like, if you're in an environment where I guess people act like we're in an environment where somebody's, collecting dossiers on everybody that they see on the internet. Like, oh, we have a profile on that guy that posted a blurry picture. Well, he's got a cross tattoo on his forearm. So, and he stood with this buddy that was wearing red shoes. So we got him, and it's like, that's yeah, technically you're in the OPSEC territory, but that's not what it's about. It's about it's more about your community. It's more about what's happening in your community. What kind of connections you have. Who do you frequent? What gym do you go to? Who do you go work out with at the gym? Where do you go to church? All those types of things that is almost inevitable to hide when you're being, if you're being actively targeted because you're just passively living your life. That is operational security. And it's way harder to do than people think. So there's kind of two ways to go about it. You can either be super secretive and be very careful about who you affiliate yourself with and have, everything's kind of insulated and you have kind of like stories in place for everything, or you hide in plain sight and you do all those things and you have a clear reason of why you do them all and they don't connect together.
Yeah.
Other than that's just how you live your life, So, and I can't sit here and give you a whole OPSEC, breakdown. One, because I don't have all the answers myself, but two, it's very dependent on you. But that starts now, and that's something that in this fake scenario of like a dystopian society, you would have to have it, because like a major tyrannical surveillance state is going to be.
They're going to try to connect all the dots.
Yeah, it's counterintelligence and counter surveillance.
Yeah, and it's all bad, and even to the point of like, hey, you've been compromised. It's like you got to ditch everything, and
yeah,
you can't have anything get traced back to anyone else at that point. Like, even if it means like, yeah, you're going down, but you're not letting other people go down with you. So that's tough.
Yep.
Because as simple as a radio getting out is like bad.
Oh yeah, it can ruin everything.
Yeah. Or cell phone, or it's like, dude.
Yep.
But
yeah, it's and then there's just realistic levels of it too, where there's some things that you practically can't hide,
Yeah.
So, another thing that is really important, it kind of goes with OPSEC, is need to know basis. So having policies in place where you can. I mean, it sounds weird, and I don't like the idea really of hiding information from people like within the team.
Yeah.
But so this more in my brain applies to people outside of your team. Whatever team that may be, whether it's like your little Minuteman group, or if you've like, you're deep in some crazy environment where you've been trying to set up counterintelligence operations or in reconnaissance operations. It's like, not everybody needs to know every detail.
Yeah.
And definitely like even just family, this is where like, yeah, your family should know who you're around and who to trust and stuff, but your family doesn't need to know all the details of like, all right, baby, we're going to go down to their, vehicle, motor pool and take pictures of all their vehicles, and we're going to be there from this time to this time. Like, they don't need to know that,
Yeah.
And actually they don't really, that's an example of like, if you're not involved in that operation, then you don't need to be talking about it, and nobody needs to know.
I think the larger your team gets, the more the need to know might actually apply.
Yeah.
'Cause I think you see that in the military all the time. It's like a lot of times, like, how many times do you go out on mission, not really know, like, yeah, you're hitting this objective or whatever, but you don't actually know the main reason why this objective's like a target of interest.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you get information on the objective, so that way you know how to go in and clear the rooms and whatnot. But it's like, I don't know what they're looking for. Some CIA person's chilling with us, and he's here, and I have no idea what the heck he's here for. And it's like,
and you get told that his whole reason he's there is classified.
Yeah, so it's like,
oh, all
right, cool, but it works. It's an effective method, and it's like, the less people that know, the less chances it gets spoiled or gets put out there unintentionally or whatever it may be. So it's, I think it's smart. Yeah. You don't want to leave everyone in the dark, but at the same time, it's like, it may be better for their own benefit to be left in the dark.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think there's levels of that. Like, there's compartmentalization, where you may know, like, someone in your team may know that this specific group is going to do this objective, but that's all you know. You don't know all the details of the mission, and and that is, I've found, can be challenging, because it's, especially from like, the civilian side, and trying to learn this stuff and practice this stuff. You get into it, and it gets fun to like talk about, and but it's really important, even for like looking at now, like current day. Like, if you do have a group of people, that needs to be like, it's okay to be open about that. I think, like, again, I think there's levels, because I truly, first of all, I believe in our Constitution and the Second Amendment. It's very clear what you're allowed to do. and there's really interesting laws that are getting pushed around right now that are kind of in direct opposition to that, like the whole paramilitary crap bill that's out there.
Yeah.
Might have to do a whole episode on that and break that whole thing down, but like that's very regardless of that, right now it is completely within our right as citizens to form and work inside militias and stuff like that. So whatever that looks like for you, don't be ashamed of it, but you don't need to be on a megaphone putting it out there that, oh yeah, I'm in a group that's got this guy and this guy and this guy in it, and we go out and we train and we're looking for people, that can get a little bit crazy. And that's like operational security kind of stuff right now. But with that, I mean, it's coming back to the need to know, there just doesn't need to be a lot of cross communication and a lot of just flippant conversation in general about the inner workings of whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
So pay attention to who's listening, man. You never know. This next one I got in here is massive. Cover identities. If you are out doing the thing, you have got to have backup reasons and explanations of why you're out doing whatever it is you're doing. And again, we're talking dystopian environment here. So this is an environment where you can 100% get stopped and questioned very aggressively.
Yeah.
You probably don't want to have weird stuff on you either. If you get caught with you could get frisked, you could get, checked. Like going back to Afghanistan all the time, we would question people and we would pat them down and see if they had weapons hidden underneath their clothing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they were smart and they almost never did. Sometimes we literally found people a lot of times they'd let their women carry that stuff because culturally we weren't really supposed to touch their women, but there was times where it was dude, no, this is obvious. And there's times that worked out where it was we knew it, and then there's just no way around it. So but yeah, having being smart about that, but then having a full alias and identities that can kind of conceal what your true intentions are, and also the true identities of team members and stuff, and having ways to be able to kind of break contact, even if it's passively breaking contact, just, hey, we got to leave. This goes back to your planning. Wait, all the way back to your planning. Knowing where you can break off from, and if you're followed, what you're going to do, and we know each other because of this reason, or I don't know that guy. We're not together. You need to have all that pre-thought out, and that's crazy. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
But that right there, especially for the civil reconnaissance stuff when dealing with this kind of environment, is probably one of the most important things. And this goes back to feeding your operational security or protecting your operational security.
Yep.
It's it's a big deal. The other thing to think about in this age of technology that we're in, once you get connected to that identity, they're not just going to forget that. You're probably going to have, your picture taken, your biometrics taken. You're going to have speech recordings, probably. We were doing that in Afghanistan, in the middle of nowhere to people. We would literally take their picture, scan their biometrics, scan their eye, and take a voice sample. And it would get uploaded to the cloud. That's not new. That's not super new. This was back in, 2011.
Uploaded to the cloud.
Yeah. I don't know where it went, but to a server
Such
somewhere.
A boomer thing to say, dude.
No, it's not. It's accurate, isn't it?
I mean, not really.
Satellite upload.
It is, but I'm just saying. It went up to the cloud.
But yeah, dude. I mean, that's 100% gonna be happening nowadays. And that's going to be, it's probably going to be connected to you being caught under surveillance cameras doing other things as another person. So this is complicated stuff. Being able to operate covertly in the environment, use some stealth. This could be as simple as, dressing up as somebody else. let's say you dress up as like a construction worker. Dude, I swear construction workers can have access to anything in the whole world that they want. The amount of times I've been like on an actual job as a construction worker.
I know.
And you just don't get questioned. Like when I was doing plumbing pipe fitting stuff, we were working in a courthouse, and you just barge in there with your tools, and they're just like, head on in.
Yeah.
No
Bane
questions.
had it figured out.
What?
I said Bane had it figured out.
Bane?
Yeah.
Oh,
dude, he
man.
literally took over that whole city with construction workers.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Dude, you put on a vest, a hard hat, and carry a ladder, you can get into any building in the world. Just about,
Pretty much.
Any like small government structure or anything
Yeah,
that's
you guys had a
normally
pipe break.
non-permissive.
I was supposed to come in and fix it.
Yeah, dude, you can smash about. But yeah, thinking outside the box, being able to do that kind of stuff, having ways to avoid surveillance cameras, with just like clothing and stuff that blends in.
Yep.
There's a whole other level to this. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So just being able to camouflage yourself to your environment. Again, camouflage is not always going to be like your super tactical, M81 woodland. It's however you can hide best in your environment. You need to avoid contrasting the environment as much as possible. And that might be as simple as like what you were talking about towards the beginning of the episode. If you're dressed like somebody that works on a farm and you're walking around New York City, you're probably going to stick out.
Yeah.
People are going to be like, what is this guy? And vice versa. If you're wearing like a business casual outfit and you're in, some random No Country for Old Men vibe somewhere, then you're going to get asked to flip a coin, dude. And then what do you do?
What do I have to gain?
Everything. That's such a good movie. That's the movie I actually
Your
wanted to
whole life.
watch randomly.
Last night?
When we watched V for Vendetta, I was like, we should watch No Country for Old Men, and she was like, no, that movie's too intense. And I was like, all right. And then I said V for Vendetta, which is also kind of an intense movie. That's what I thought was kind of funny. She's like, yeah, that sounds great. And I was like, all right.
It's less intense though.
It is less intense.
But anyways.
You've been putting it up your whole life.
Dude, that scene.
Dude, it's so crazy. That's such a cool character. Call it.
Doesn't he have like a suppressed shotgun or something random that he uses in that?
Yep.
Whoa.
And he also has that weird like air compressor thing.
Oh yeah.
I love that. See, that's a great example of just do something confidently like you're supposed to be doing it and you won't get questioned. He's like, hold still. He just puts that thing to that guy's head and just kills that guy. That guy's like, what are you doing? What's going on? And just gets smoked. It's like, whoa, dude. Crazy. Hold still, please. All right. So surveillance awareness, we kind of already started to get into this a little bit, but this is something that you can pick up on now. Like where is CCTV cameras at? Where are, what's the difference between private surveillance and like state ran surveillance?
Yeah, but they may have access to private surveillance as well. So it's like,
that's true. Paying attention to when new surveillance stuff gets added. I know recently they've started adding like, we didn't have them for years here. And then now recently they've been adding, like intersection cameras.
Yeah. You seen those videos of guys going around blocking those?
No.
Like putting stickers up?
Oh, here?
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, it's classic, dude.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me if people started doing it here.
They're doing it here. That's what I'm saying. Like,
well, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying people are going around and like literally like they just and they just put stickers up on them.
How are they getting up there and doing it?
They have like weird extended like they like roll them on, dude.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, I've seen videos of guys doing it.
That's funny.
And I'm like, it's kind of crazy.
There you
go.
go.
They just cruise off.
That sounds good. That's good stuff right there. That kind of falls into the thing we're talking about. That I'd consider that a counter surveillance measure, but that's pretty overt though. So
yeah,
But this is where I was going to get into, like, there's a whole new perspective on this, and it's all about the AI thing. Have you seen, like, and I don't know how legitimate it is, but I've seen it go around a couple times, but it's like those fake fingers that, like, double up your fingers, and then it's so you can, and then, yeah, so then criminals can...
Mission Impossible? What's going on right now?
No, it literally makes it look like you have more than natural fingers on your hand, and then it's so they're trying to say that may make evidence inadmissible because they'll argue that it's artificial intelligence created. It's AI
I thought it was
created.
gonna have like its own fingerprint or something crazy.
No. This is
So they're
changing
arguing like, okay, yeah, this looks
is like taking.
So you like put on the Hunchback of Notre Dame suit and you like cruise around and you're like, oh, no, that's not me. I don't have a hunchback.
Yeah. Or like, oh
that
no,
must be
see,
AI.
this looks like it's AI generated. My client obviously doesn't have 8 fingers, but then they're wearing like little, like somebody's making them already. They're little rings you slide on that have another like finger above it. You haven't seen that?
No, dude.
Yeah.
That is so random, but
Yeah, it's
so
super
crazy.
weird. But I don't know how legitimate that is. That's just something to think about. We're heading in a crazy direction. I think the surveillance technology and the surveillance capabilities is only going to tenfold increase over the next like few years. So
Yeah, and then what happens when AI stops making that mistake?
yeah,
Like, I don't know how they're still making that mistake.
dude, it sucks at making hands, dude. And I'm telling you, any AI creation of somebody eating something is going to be the weirdest thing you've ever seen. They just start devolving into like putty so fast, and just before you know it, their whole arm is in their mouth.
Or you know, it just looks like Hillary Clinton, and you're just like, whoa.
You're like, whoa. Dude, so weird. So obviously communication comes in here, secure communications though, more specifically, and that might be encrypted. I think anytime somebody says encrypted, they automatically think of like something digital.
Yeah.
It's not really the direction I think you need to go. I'm thinking more like one-time pads and different kinds of ciphers that only you and those that you're trying to communicate with understand. Because I'm like, you got to go back old school here, because here's the deal. In an environment like this, you're outmatched.
Yeah, dude, we're going back to the Cherokee days, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Or Navajos, is that what that was?
Yeah, the Navajo. Was it Navajo?
I don't remember. The coders or whatever they were called.
The code breakers or whatever.
Yeah. I might look it up really quick.
Dude.
That's cool, though.
It is really cool. And there's a lot of history there in ciphers. If you're not familiar with one-time pads, look them up. That's actually another thing that Reaper has been focusing a lot of time and energy on. It's really good stuff. And this is kind of his world. I think his content is very, very focused on this whole perspective of kind of countering a surveillance state.
Code talkers.
Okay.
But either way.
In a more dystopian kind of environment. So if you're not following him, definitely check him out. Yeah, you've got to secure your communication. You got to have a way to keep yourself from getting blown just by simply trying to, whether that's deliver information or simply communicate.
Yeah.
So, radios are tough. I don't think radios work very good in this environment at all. Cell phones, I mean, if cell phones are still allowed and available, then you could use them, but you better have some covers. It better not be like blatantly like I'm at the enemy's motor pool right now. Like, you're gonna need to be like, yeah, dude, like the pizza shop's closed, and then everybody knows what that means.
Like, oh yeah, he's a pedophile.
Whoa,
Talking about pizza.
Yeah. Oh boy, what's going on right now? Dude, the amount of Alex Jones flooding of the brain that just happened. Where were we? So yes, securing communications.
I think a lot of people also, like, with the encrypted radios, like, people don't understand that with an SDR, like, that's going to stick out. Like, that's going to be a super red flag.
Yeah.
It's like running encryption.
Yep.
I don't know. To me, at least, it's like, oh yeah, these guys are trying to hide their conversation.
Yeah. No, for sure. And are you running like a 256-bit encryption that's going to actually be hard to crack, or is it like 46-bit that's going to get cracked in like 30 minutes?
Yeah.
So I got this Baofeng encrypted. It's like, dude, yep. Sounds good. We already know what you're saying. In that amount of time, we figured it out. So we also know where you are, and the drone's coming to kill you. It's like, that's kind of the level that it can go to, depending on who you're messing with.
Yeah.
So,
dude, I was going to ask you, total side tangent, and it has nothing to do with this podcast, but we're throwing it in there. How are they recovering the videos of these drones coming in and blowing people up? Because it's recording back to the device. All right. Yeah, I should have just thought about that question before I asked it.
I didn't even know how to respond to you. It's like, what do you mean? They're watching, like, they're recording it on their end.
Yeah.
Somehow Steven just for a second thought they were just flying in physically on these drones.
I didn't think it was physical, but
I know.
was like, oh man. Yeah, I guess all the stuff gets recorded back.
Yeah, it's all those FPV, those first person view drones. So they're wearing those goggles.
It's stored outside of the device then?
It's recording inside their goggle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's an SD card in there or if you just plug it in to something.
Yeah.
And I know some of them just go to your phone, like,
well, yeah.
So there's that. And I know you could just record it on your phone. But the ones that are being used like a lot, the ones that are really quick and zipping around.
Zip into people's just.
Those are FPV drones, first person view.
Yeah.
And they're wearing those goggles. But yeah, those goggles definitely record,
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
That's how. That's a whole other surveillance
quick
method
you
right
die.
there. Yeah, dude. That's a whole other thing. Whew.
That's scary. Anyways.
We've gotten a lot of questions on drones. Dude, we don't know. I mean, obviously, we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to drones. So we're going to have some people on. We've got some stuff planned coming up. So we'll do it, but we're going to be the dummies that ask the questions because we've got drones, but we don't really know how to use them at all. I've never even flown a drone, so I have no clue. Like, I know nothing about it. But there you go.
Yeah.
All right, scouting and macro recon. What does that mean? That sounds super high speed. It's not. It's just big picture stuff. Like, you should have a good... this goes back to everything we've talked about. You should have enough information about your local community that if we were to ever find ourselves in this dystopian world, you can action on a lot of this info, and kind of view this as like a leader's recon. So prior to your whole reconnaissance mission, there needs to be a more passive kind of more risk, or I shouldn't say risk-free, a lower risk type reconnaissance that you can do that can get you information on if it's going to be worth the higher risk to go out and do a more specific reconnaissance.
Yeah. Whew.
So
we made it.
Yeah, dude. My tongue was mappling around, dude. Yeah, so that's pretty straightforward. Just everything from overall operations down to like surveillance, security measures that you're going to be up against, all the big macro, big picture stuff. And then your mission would be more micro, more hyper focused on whatever your objective is that you want to find out. So, you need to have an E&E plan.
Oh yeah.
You want to talk about E&E plans?
I mean, have them for multiple stages throughout the mission.
Yeah, it's an emergency evacuation.
Oh, you mean? Oh, you wanted me to actually break down what an E&E was?
Yeah, if you want.
Oh yeah,
I feel like I'm talking nonstop, so I'm tagging you in.
Okay. Yeah, it's an emergency extraction plan. So,
it's exactly what it sounds like it is.
Yeah. No, so you're gonna want to have multiple plans planned out for throughout the entire mission, basically, because you don't really know when you could come under contact or whatever, wherever you had to evacuate. And it may be a more passive evacuation too. Like, hey, this isn't going to work out. They got a choke point on this road system, so we're going to have to bail out like early. But having plans put in place to deal with a multitude of different events that could potentially ruin whatever mission you're on. So, and then that goes all the way from, more passive to like more like, all right, we've been compromised, and like, what's our, rally points that we've designated in order to get out. We don't want to drag an enemy force back to like a home base. So we want to escape, and if we have to destroy equipment, leaving no trace. So it's like, man, that gets tough pretty quick. But there's just a lot that you have to think about in that emergency evacuation plan, because that's kind of like worst case scenario right there. So if things do go badly, having plans put in place to effectively deal with it is super important.
Yep. Yeah, and you're going to need it. I mean, there's no other way around it. That's something you need to have for even just like modern day stuff, but definitely in this environment. And on top of that, I think your plan should include like ways to scrub like anything that could compromise you. Like if you are running like one-time pads or something, destroy them. They got to get rid of them.
Yep.
So, that's a whole thing.
Not just get rid of them, but destroy them, like you said.
Yeah. Then we get into local contacts, which we've already talked about this a little bit, but man, this is so powerful, and this is where a community can thrive even under like a lot of pressure, a lot of hyper surveillance and control, just by having those local contacts, those kind of pillars of the community and stuff, and then even beyond, like all of your people that are running the day-to-day within the community, kind of even just like at gas stations and stuff, all the parts of the local environment that are going to keep going, obviously, even in a world like this. Man, having contacts and even networks developed in that is huge, and it's historical. It's been done for years. I mean, that's
it's kind of random. This is gonna be super weird, but I recently started watching Little House on the Prairie with my family.
Okay.
And dude, they display local contacts probably better in that show than any show I've ever seen.
Really?
Dude. There's so many episodes where all the men in the community come together and basically come to an agreement with each other, and they hold to. Whether it be, there's like one episode where, and this is really random, but like I think it's Billy the Kid or some famous outlaws in town, and there's someone looking, it's not a law enforcement, but it's like bounty hunters that are trying to come in and get them. But no. You're derailing me right now, dude. You're derailing
me.
But anyways, there's the bounty hunters that come in, and they like, all the dudes are like, no, we're not letting these guys get these guys, even though they're outlaws, but it could potentially harm people in their community because they had people hostage in that situation. So they're like, no, we're not letting them take them because they're going to end up getting them killed. And they're like, no, we're not going to do it. All the way to like, hey, these people are going to lowball us for our wheat. We're going to sell at this price, but we got to all get on the same page, because if anyone goes low, then it screws all the other farmers over.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, it countless through that show.
Yeah. They unionized.
Kind of, basically, but like within their own little community, dude. It's sick, man. Like they'll all just get together. All right, man, let's all get together, dude.
Yeah.
And they do it so many times, and every time it happens, I'm like, that is so cool, dude.
That's what we need to get back to.
Yeah.
That's how it used to be.
Yeah.
That right there, that's just community stuff right there. But that's a great example, yeah. But
I'm just thinking, like, you have a hostile force come in. If everyone Whoa.
It started playing again.
Anyways. If everyone could get on the same page, it's like, it's kind of hard to, I mean, obviously you're only as weak, you're as weak as your weakest link in that situation. So
yeah,
eventually someone's going to fold. It always happens that way. And that's where it goes back to that need to know basis.
Mm-hmm.
Who, no, you can't me like that, dude. Just destroyed me. But yeah, that goes back to the need to know basis, because it's like, obviously there's going to be like weak links, and
yeah,
you know, you keep them involved and you make them feel like, oh yeah, we trust you, but like deep down inside you're kind of like, dude, this guy's soft.
Yeah. Wimpy. Yeah, dude.
But
no, it's good. That's a good example. But and that goes back all the way back to what we just talked about. Like, know your neighbors, you know, be involved in your community. There's no excuse for it. And you can't expect, if your community finds itself under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress, you can't accept to just be welcomed in by the proactive part of the community if you've never been involved with it to begin with.
yeah,
It just won't happen.
absolutely.
So, yeah. Another obvious one is your risk assessment. We've already talked a lot about that, so we're going to keep going. That's pretty straightforward. This one's huge, and it's something that you only get by having team chemistry and training together and consistently working on that, and that's adaptability.
Yeah.
And being prepared to just completely throw out, you know, the whole primary plan and shift completely. And all the stuff we've talked about dials into this, you know, being adaptable enough to like come up with a whole other story, being adaptable enough to use a local contact and not put them in danger, but being able to disguise what your true intentions were, being able to just completely go off into the wilderness and just, well, crap, I'm blown, and I don't want to lead anybody back to my house, so I'm just going to go live out in the woods for the next few days.
Yeah.
Never know.
Being adaptable to routes, like going back to my, you know, E&E description, like, hey, you know, there's a checkpoint here. Having the adaptability to know, like, hey, I can take this route. Yeah, it's going to take me longer, but I'm going to be potentially able to dodge this checkpoint, and because I understand the area and I'm able to adapt, overcome.
Whoa, yeah, dude. And then kind of goes hand in hand with that, your contingency plans. So, and actually, I should probably put contingency plans above adaptability, because you should have well thought out contingency plans that don't rely so much on your adaptability. I mean, being able to just flow into a contingency plan is being adaptable, but you know, having to make those on the fly decisions and truly adapt to your environment or to a problem is a lot easier to do if you have plans already pre-made. Yep. So, but you can't plan for everything. So
that's kind of going back to like a PACE plan, like a primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency.
Yep. Yeah, and we talked a lot about contingency plans, so the same thing applies. It would obviously go across the board for your whole planning process and for everything we've kind of talked about. And then the final thing I have, which is actually I think actually a pretty big deal, and that's your ethical and moral considerations. You need to maintain, you know, a good sense of ethics and a sense of morality when doing this kind of stuff. Kind of going back to like the rules of engagement, like you're referencing. It's like, yeah, we had rules of engagement when we were in Afghanistan. Our hands are kind of tied behind our backs, but that's what set us apart from just being murderous, evil people.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't just killing everybody, and we weren't just doing whatever it took. And I think there's a very dark and disappointing trend that I'm starting to see in the gun community towards this, like, you know, you need to be able to do whatever it takes is kind of like the thing you'll hear, which is kind of like a hot button, or it's kind of like a catchphrasey,
yeah,
you know, cliche thing like, are you actually able to do whatever it takes, and it's just the person that's saying it, you're like looking back at them like, what are you,
Yeah.
So but it's like you should never sacrifice your moral constitution and your integrity as an individual. Like there needs to be a line and needs to be a boundary. And for me, there's going to be things that like I would rather, and it sounds weird, but I would rather be killed and die with my integrity intact than sacrifice that and bring a bunch of other people down with me just to accomplish something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it gets complicated when you involve like kids and stuff because, I mean, there's not a lot I wouldn't do for my kids and for my family. But even there, it's and this maybe it just comes back to the my belief in Christ and I know where my eternity lies. So there's a lot to be said about the willingness to just accept that it's your time and not compromise who we're supposed to be in Christ,
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't apply to everybody, but it definitely applies to me. But even if that specifically doesn't apply to you, it's it's a big deal to maintain your ethics and also not throw your community out to dry, not leave your community out to dry, like leave them high and dry, whatever the saying is, I was trying to find it, but not throw your community under the bus,
Yep.
Like this whole point of this entire thing is to protect and safeguard our community. I would hope, like that's the whole kind of Minuteman focus, so maintaining some integrity and some ethics and trying to accomplish all this stuff in a way that is honorable to our fellow community members is important.
Yeah.
So, and it's not talked about enough, I don't think. For some reason, it's even viewed as like weak. And I view it completely the opposite. It's like, no, it's easy to become an idiot. It's easy to just become a tyrant, just a murderous tyrant.
Yeah.
Like in a society that's not holding you accountable anymore,
Yep.
It's easy to become that. It's hard to actually have the integrity and the standards to be good and not be quick to judge and just make up your own decisions and decide people's fates.
Yep.
But it's complicated, and that's honestly its own. That's a big philosophical question, how that even works in an environment that's rough. So, but that's all I got, dude.
Dude, I think that's a fantastic way to end it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're gonna be more regular on the podcast now. We had to take a little break there, like I was saying, to kind of get things dialed in, get some stuff done. So also, please go support us on both of our Instagrams if you can. We're on YouTube too. We're not doing a whole lot on there yet, dude. I was so bummed. I was planning on posting the same stuff over there because I know there's a lot of people that don't really use Instagram, but they use YouTube, and we've gotten a lot of feedback that like, oh, I'm so glad you post everything to YouTube now because that's pretty much all I use. Like the podcast is on there stuff now, just audio. It's not, we're not filming it, but yeah, I didn't realize that shorts were only 60 seconds because on Instagram they can be 90 seconds.
Yeah.
So all of my videos are all the ones that we've made are like 90 seconds. And I've tried to edit one down and like clip it up to make it work in shorts format, and it's just dumb. It makes me mad. So
yeah,
it's kind of frustrating. But anyways,
YouTube will get the long form.
Yeah,
whenever
I think
we
that's
get around to
the
that.
plan. We're gonna do long format videos of a lot of the topics we're kind of doing the short format stuff on. So we're excited about it, and we'll start having it out there a lot more. But anyways, yeah, thanks again for listening, and I think that's pretty much all we got. Bye.